guys, today we are going to be talking about value a little bit more. So value is shading, going light to dark. And so far we've talked about it like a rectangle, right? Where we start with our 1 and eventually there are 9 squares or so and it goes all the way up to 9. 9 being the darkest shade possible, 1 being the lightest shade possible, and 2 through 7 really being in the middle here. We're going to hop down our light a little so we can see better. There we are. Yeah, so our 2s all the way up to maybe like 5, 6, 7s, 8s, and then 9s. All right. Now, when you go to a museum or when you see a piece of art that you like, instead of saying something like, oh, I love how the 9s in this piece are really working, or the 1s in this piece look so nice, the artists around us tend to use some fancy words that we're going to go over today. And those are, we have highlight, midtone, reflective light, and cast shadow. These are 4 fancy words to say what part of the value scale somebody is talking about. There we go. I'm going to highlight this in green. There we are. So let's start with highlight and cast shadow. These two are our easiest ones to identify. Highlight, 1 through 9, that's going to be your number 1 to maybe 2. So highlight goes all the way right here. Cast shadow, this is exactly the opposite. They are number 8 to number 9. So they like to hang out right around here. And midtone and reflective light, they are everything in between. So it usually starts with number 3 and it usually goes to number 7. These are our middle gray areas. And we're going to talk about the difference between these two with some of our examples. So it's one thing to see it in a rectangle and to talk about it, but I want to show you some objects that could help us out identify where each of these are. Okay guys, let's take this with a real object here, Kit Kat bar. And I choose a Kit Kat bar because the wrappers are just so reflective, and the other examples we'll do are also going to be on candy. And so here we go. We're looking for the highlight and the cast shadow first. Our highlight is the very brightest part of the wrapper. And so that is going to be right here, this shiny line that I'm outlining. Right there. That is our highlight because it's the brightest part on the whole object. Cast shadow, that cannot be on your actual object because it's a shadow. And so it follows the object, but it's on the surface beneath the object, so the paper rather than the actual wrapper. And so I've outlined it here, but this is our cast shadow. So it's very, very dark. It's around 8 to 9. So within this section, that's our cast shadow. And then everything else on the object is either midtone or reflective light. Now, what's the difference? Reflective light is when you take my light object, that's my lamp around here in this corner, and the light bounces from the white paper onto the wrapper. All right. So usually reflective light is towards the bottom of your object. See that? Rather than the top, because the bottom is closest to the surface it's reflecting, which is the white paper. So the light has bounced onto the white paper and then boom, hit our Kit Kat wrapper. And this bottom edge here, right until it gets to the highlight, is our reflective light. Versus this guy back here, he's a little bit darker, same over here. That would be our midtone. So reflective light is just a little bit brighter than our midtone. However, a lot of people get so excited when they see reflective light and they're like, oh, it's a 1 or a 2. We still have to remember that the reflective light is much darker than our highlight up here. So our highlight is 1, reflective light over here is probably a 3 or a 4, and our midtone is going to be that 5 through 7 until we get to the cast shadow. Let's try it with a different option. All right, so here we have a Twix bar. So let's again start with highlight. Last time on the Kit Kat bar, it was just 1 line, and that was it. The Twix, due to the position of the lighting, it's a little bit different. Instead of coming from here, it's now all the way over here. And so we have this bright area, but you see how it's broken up into 2 different shapes? And we also have this area too. All 3 of these are highlights. So your highlight doesn't have to be in one solid shape. It's really about what shade it is. There's even a tiny highlight line right here if you look very, very closely. That is so exciting. And then our cast shadow is a little bit easier to see on this one. Look at that darkness right there and swirling around it too. That's our cast shadow because it's off the object. So it's not actually on the Twix, it's off the Twix. And it is also very, very dark. Okay, and you can even see a little bit of a cast shadow right here too. Now, let's talk about reflective light. So the light has hit the surface, boom, and then bounced back up, boom. So you can see the difference between this shade and this shade. This shade right here, that is reflective light. This shade up here is dark. So that's our midtone. And you can see there's a little bit of reflective light up here too. So this light shade, because it's near the side or the bottom of our object, versus the midtones, which are all up on the top here. Excellent. Let's try it one more. All right. I'm going to choose this one because it has very little to no reflective light. The other ones, it was a lot easier to see reflective light. This one, because he's such a thin, flat object, we will not see too much reflective light. So that means we can focus on our midtones more because I feel like I haven't focused on them a lot. And so let's again start with the easy one. So highlight, it has been broken up into multiple shapes. So anything from these dots and this line over here that looks like the letter Y, anything from over here, anything from over here to there. And so you can see this object is so much fun with how many highlights it has. The cast shadow, that would be again off the object. And this time there are two sides that have a cast shadow. So you have this side, look at that gorgeous thin line. And you also have this side over here. Now, we have a wrinkly wrapper, which means we even have some cast objects on our wrapper. And so sometimes they can be right next to the highlight, like this right here, because the wrapper is so 3D compared to the other ones, that there's some really dark areas in our piece. Look at that. The wrinkles are lifted up so high that they can actually cast a shadow onto other parts of our candy wrapper. All right. And remember, anything in between is our midtone. So that means it can be as light as a 3 and go all the way up to 7. So that's anything from here, this shade, which is very, very, very light, or even this shade in between these two highlights, to it can be as dark as over here or over here. This is where you really have to test your knowledge of the value scale, saying, okay, is it cast shadow? Is it casting anything like this guy over here? Or is it just a really dark midtone, maybe like over here? This is where it starts to get really fun. Now, we're going to move into our fabric project, and usually fabric doesn't have as strong of shiny areas or shadow areas as, say, candy wrappers do. Candy wrappers are really, really shiny, and the shinier something is, the easier it is to tell where the highlights, cast shadows, and everything are. But this is a good way to at least start seeing value in our pieces. Good luck, guys!